obviously all Canadians continue and will continue to have questions about why this happened, what could possibly be the motives behind it. As was indicated last night by our Public Security Minister, at this time we have no reason to suspect that there is any national security element to this attack.
Well, now we know that the driver accused of killing 10 people and injuring 15 others in Toronto, Canada last week may have been motivated by an extreme form of misogyny. In a Facebook post published before the attack, suspect Alek Minassian referred to the Incel rebellion. Now, Incel is short for involuntarily celibate, and it's a term used by an online community of men who blame women for their non-existent sex lives. Minassian had praised fellow Incel subscriber Elliot Rodger, who killed more than a dozen people in 2014. Incel groups online push the idea that women are only attracted to hypermasculine men, and some advocate violence as a way to change that. Well, to better understand the phenomenon, I'm joined now by Donna Dawson, who's a behavioral psychologist from London. Thanks so much for speaking to us, Donna. I mean, first of all, tell us who really are these men, and how many are there?
Well, there are several online groups, as far as I know. Difficult to tell what the numbers are, but apparently it's composed mostly of teenaged boys who are frustrated and lonely. And there are other issues involved here, extreme bullying, feeling cut off from society. That coupled with a sense of entitlement. So if you link entitlement with low self-esteem and a fatalistic outlook on life, whereby you feel you can't improve yourself or everything's against you, it's a really toxic mix. But it's lonely, sad people, mostly, well, it's men, who are coming together online to form communities, and instead of helping each other through their issues, are letting their kind of anger and frustration at women and society in general just kind of fester, so that at some point their action is taken of a violent kind to kind of do something, to make a statement.
Right. These online forums really seem to fuel that misogyny. I want to go back to that in a second, but what you said was really interesting about it's one thing to be frustrated by the fact that you're not getting what you want from women and you can't have a proper romantic relationship, but the fact that they feel so entitled to it, that women actually owe them. Where does that come from?
This is a very strange phenomena. I would have said, I noticed this as a trend happening in the 80s. That we had the me generation in the 80s where everybody felt they were entitled to happiness and they would take shortcuts to get there. That's when the divorce rate went up, when people were looking for quickie divorces and the next marriage to help them you know, gain what they thought was their right to happiness. Now, whether that in turn has produced children who feel the same way, but I think the social media has got to take some blame here, because you go online and you see people's portraying themselves in an idealistic sort of way. I have this, I have that, I look like that. And a lot of it isn't real. A lot of it is, you know, photographically touched up. It's exaggerated. You can be who you want to be online. And if you buy into that, you begin to feel, particularly if you're not playing that game, you begin to feel inadequate yourself. You begin to feel you can't compete. But there are also bigger issues, because social media, unfortunately, reflects the world we also live in. It seems a lot of these boys were bullied at school. And looking online, too, it looks like their relationships with women are pretty fractured. Reading into some of the types that they developed, the kind of nerdy incel type, some stuff that was written about that, it looked as though the mothers were overly powerful and strong, the fathers were weak and flabby, sisters were bullying and emotionally abusive, mothers may have committed crimes. There was all kinds of hidden issues going on with understanding the opposite sex, with relating to them, with not feeling nurtured. I would be very interested to know whether the killer, the Toronto killer, had a kind of fractured family background, whether he got on with his mother,
right,
whether he had sisters or female relatives he didn't identify with. There's something deeper here.
Right. As you were saying before,
it isn't about sex.
Right. And fueling some of the more kind of extreme actions they take and reinforcing the misogyny is that they realize they're not alone. They find this support online, on that online community. That really is dangerous.
I think the danger too online networking and social websites is that you can find like-minded individuals and you can group together, and it somehow validates your view because you think, oh, well, I'm not alone in feeling this. I must be okay, this must be right. And there will always be a percentage that will topple over into action. So it doesn't just stay fermenting and people complaining to each other. Some people will take action, and that's true of any emotion and any issue.
Right, so sometimes those online communities are great when people genuinely need support and they are lonely, but there are the elements that run into dangerous territory. Let me ask about something else at play here.
Yes.
As I've heard, there are some members of the community that some behavioral psychologists think suffer from autism, the kind of functional autism that lets them hold a job, look like normal members of society, but they can't function socially, and they look instead for tangible things to blame for their social discomfort and their inadequacies, when the truth is they can't control or change that. Now, how can that be addressed?
Well, you see, I think, yes, I'm familiar with autism and the autistic spectrum, and there is a lot more diagnosing going on of what we would have called maybe social personality issues a few years ago. We're putting it on the autistic spectrum. I don't know how helpful that is because at the end we have to address all of this. The main problem behind what's happened, I think, in Toronto are men who can't form relationships. There's no such thing as, I can't get sex. All men can get sex. They can pay for sex. They can go to prostitutes. It's not about that. It's about how they've attached the feeling of entitlement to the opposite sex and why they feel they need to be given what they need. And this is an autistic trait, I have to say. When you don't understand that you can't be given what you need. You know, I've seen that in my own grandchildren.
Okay.
So the issue here, but they can learn. The thing is, you can learn to behave socially. And what we need to do in society is to address, where do these people go? Where do they go online? Where are the relationship forums that help people learn to form relationships? Where are the relationship classes in schools that help you to understand that before you have sex, you have to form a relationship? And how do you do that?
Right. Donna, ideally, if you could intervene in one of these online groups and talk to these men, what would you do?
I would ask them about their experiences with the women in their lives, with their mothers, with their sisters, with female teachers, with possible girlfriends they wanted, and ask them where they think it went wrong and what they think they can do about it. Because what bothers me is all of these men feel doomed. They're fatalistic. They don't feel they can control or make any changes in their lives. You know, what is it about them that they feel genetically inferior? What is it they feel they can't change? Why do they feel their lives are not under their own control when indeed they are? Because this is a terribly bad mixture. When you feel not in control and there's nothing that can be done and you are up against a wall, you will react with frustration, anger, and violence. So you need to know there are steps you can take to improve yourself, to love yourself again, to make yourself lovable and able to form relationships. You need to look at self-worth, self-confidence, the ways they feel they can get back in control of their lives. People who are 7-stone weaklings go to gyms and build themselves up.
Right.
People with personality difficulties can go to, well, hopefully, a relationship forum of some kind, or learn from other couples. There are answers out there, but it's almost as if they've refused to address them.
Okay, Donna, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on The Newsmakers.